Hello, thank you for coming to How Can We Help Making PTA Accessible to Everyone. My name is Susan Fisher. I am the New York State PTA Legislation Coordinator, and today I'm joined with Nomiko Suga, the New York State PTA Diversity Coordinator, and Lissa Zukoff, our New York State PTA Family Engagement Coordinator. Before we get into how we can help, we wanted to give you an idea of why we PTA. So as you can see, I have a picture of my family. I PTA, and how I started was I wanted to be engaged in my son's school. I wanted to know what was going on. I wanted to be active and be informed. And so I joined PTA and over the years have become more and more engaged. And now I'm here at State and talking to you. Lissa?
My name is Lissa Zukoff, and I started to PTA when my son transitioned from a center-based preschool to our regular elementary school. And while we were in that elementary school, I found that I felt a little bit more isolated. So I connected with our SEPTA, and it has been a wonderful experience for me because I learned a lot about what I had to do and had to advocate and had access to so many resources. And that is why I PTA.
Hi, I'm Namiko Suga. I'm the diversity coordinator here at New York State PTA. And as you can see, I have one. I am one and done. So, I just knew I had to go all in for my son. And like Susan and Lissa, we started because we wanted to be more active. We wanted to know more about the schools that our kids are going into. And it just kind of snowballed from there, I guess. We all go in for our kids, but I think we stay for the other kids. So anyway, next slide. Okay, so that comes up to who is your PTA? Who is part of your PTA? I hope you know who makes up your PTA and makes up your school, especially because if your PTA is not reflected of your school community, then you have a little bit of work to do. Can you go to the next slide? There are ways to figure out the top down breakdown of populations for your district is NICED. And as you can see, the hyperlink is active. So when you get this slide, you can click on it. But it's numbers, right? And people are not numbers. So one of the best ways is to develop a relationship with your principal and your district and the administration of your school. And the principal usually they absolutely have to know who's in their schools, right? And it could be, you might be able to figure out that there are some kids who have allergies. Okay, that's great, but what are they allergic to? At my school, we found out that we had one child that had a strawberry allergy. So in order to, and our nurse was like, strawberry is a really popular flavor with kids, but do we want to make this child feel left out? No. Will it hurt us to offer another option of, I think it was yogurt or something? So, getting to know the nurse, the principal, some of the teachers, they might come to you and say, hey, I have a child who is like this. And to be inclusive means you have to be inclusive. And you might think, oh, it's just one child, but to that one child, that means everything. So, okay, next slide.
Okay, so the best way to really engage with your families is we need to get them down to our meetings. We want to see them. We want to get to know them. So first of all is, where is your meeting? As I mentioned, my child transitioned to the local school, but not every child transitions to their local school. Not every child attends a school in their local district. So you want to make sure that that meeting is always accessible. So why are people coming to your meeting? How are they getting there? Those are all questions you need to answer. So the first thing you need to do is say, why are people coming to my meeting? And why aren't people coming to my meeting? Both of those things matter. You need to know. You want to think about your timing. Do you want to stagger meeting times? Do you always meet at night? Do you meet at the morning? Do you meet in the middle of the day? What's working? Take attendance and keep track of those sheets because it's going to let you know how many people are attending and are they the same people at all times or do you get different populations at different times of the day? You also think about the signage. When you think about where your meeting is, some schools, let's say you're holding it at a school, have it at the back entrance of a school, which is not typically where children enter in the morning. So you want to clearly label where the family should go and perhaps have that signage in a variety of languages. You also want to think about transportation. If public transportation is in need, then are you near a bus stop? Is there accessibility to get there easily? This all matters because the more people can get to your building, the more they can get to your meeting, the more they're there to receive what you have to say, and the more that we can engage with all of the families in our community. Also want to talk briefly about promotion. There is a great link on our website, at the New York State PTA website, if you go to membership, where they have lots of examples of flyers and ways to reach out to people. And it's also in a couple of languages. If you choose to use Google Translate to translate your documents, which is something that is very useful, try to find a native speaker to proofread that because it doesn't always translate perfectly. And you want to make sure that these are as accurate as possible. Another suggestion that I'm going to say is to try to remind people frequently. Yes, social media is a great tool, but not everybody is on social media. Work on ways to reach out to people using email, using other resources in the school. Ask the teachers or the principals if the children can write it in their planners, and then they bring it home and they can help to remind the parents. The most important way is to engage with your families, and that's really what you want to do. You want to let them know that you're there for them. One last tip I'd like to offer is to consider getting a magnet made at the beginning of the year with all of your meetings planned out and to hand that out to your families. And they can put on their refrigerators, and everybody could use another magnet and everybody can use a calendar. But the truth is, if your meetings are clearly marked, they can plan for the year ahead. They know when these meetings are going to be held, and that way any gaps in communication are covered because your meetings are clearly labeled at the beginning of the year and that information is shared. Next slide, please. So we want to talk a little about your outreach. So I wanted to, your community is an excellent resource. Your local public library is part of your school district. So I would suggest that you leave flyers and information there. Reach out to the librarians, let them know if there's a topic you're working on, and perhaps they can have books available and they can share with the community that these meetings are coming up and that they're happening. You also might want to see if your local civic association has a street fair. Perhaps you could get a table. You can hand out flyers, information on membership, and just get to know the community. It's so important that we all get to know each other. That way we all want to learn more about each other and we can work together moving forward. There's also a great resource. We will share the link for the National PTA. They have a Center for Family Engagement with many, many more tips and ideas about how we can best engage with our families. Namiko?
All right, so how can you meet with families where they are? You have to know what the obstacles are at the beginning, obviously. Do you have a lot of parents who work? A lot of parents, especially now, both parents work. Some parents work 2 jobs. Like Lisa mentioned, try different times of the day. But also, I would also check to see what dates your PTA meetings are being held. Are they on, on Eid? Are they on Yom Kippur? You're not going to get a huge population if your meetings are being held on holidays. And if your district does schedule a meeting, because I know like my district schedules our PTA meetings for us and they put it on their district calendar, well, there's an advocacy point right there, right? Why would you schedule a meeting on a night where families are not able to come because of, holidays? So just make sure that there are no obstacles or mitigate the amount of obstacles. You're not going to reach everybody, and that's okay. And don't drive yourself crazy wondering why you can't get this one family to come to the PTA meeting. Everybody has a reason why they might not. Find out what those reasons are when we switched, we had 2 daytime meetings last year. Or 2 years ago, we started that. And we got a whole different set of parents coming to our meetings, and we sort of doubled our meetings, our attendance. So we thought, well, this could be something that would work. But you have to learn, you have to be willing to try, and you have to know what the obstacles are. Sometimes it's childcare. And let me tell you, as long as you provide, a place for children to sit and not be a distraction, children are welcome at PTA meetings. Because why are we doing this if it's not for the kids, right? So consider, there are different ways to bring your kids and have them sit quietly during your meetings. I can't think of there was Susan, you came up with something, right?
Yeah. Our PTA had set up a table in the back of the room because we moved our PTA meetings from the all-purpose room to the gym to make them handicap accessible, and also just to allow everybody more space to move around. And we set up tables in the back of the PTA meetings with coloring books and puzzles. And across the street from our elementary school, there was a local community center that was starting up, and the person running it had grants and had interns who needed hours. These were college students who were working for her and needed hours. And so we worked out, with the principal's permission, to have these interns be in our PTA meeting. They had to be in the room. This wasn't providing babysitting services, but there was some sort of supervision for the kids who were in the room at the time as the meeting, so that the parents could be a little bit more focused on the business being discussed at hand. So those are just a couple of ideas. Just, having the kids have jobs. We also gave the kids the jobs of handing out the agendas to all the parents who are walking in and giving them some purpose so that they were part of the meeting.
And a lot of meetings, a lot of PTAs are PTSAs. So your kids, are allowed to be there, and they should be there.
You can have the kids do the Pledge of Allegiance when you start the meeting. You can have kid volunteers, have parents bring their kids so that they are doing and highlighted doing the Pledge of Allegiance. And there might be a way to get parents to come who don't normally come, because now you're highlighting their students or their class for doing something like that.
Okay.
So moving on, we touched a little bit on advocacy, so we wanted to talk a little bit more about that. Being an advocate is really the foundation of what the PTA is. It is the largest child advocacy association in the country. And it changes lives. Our association has a long, successful history of influencing policy to promote children's education, health, and well-being, all the way back to 1895, when mothers got together and they figured out that the link between the education of the child and educating the parent, and how important that link is. And that's how PTA started in 1897. And the first 5 causes for PTA are things that you probably didn't realize came from PTA. The creation of kindergarten classes, the creation of child labor laws, hot lunch programs, the juvenile protection system, and mandatory immunizations all came from PTA advocates. Something that you need to remember is that every PTA member is an advocate for children. We're always engaged in advocacy when we support and speak up for children. Like Namiko said, just speaking up for the child who has a strawberry allergy, you're an advocate for all children who have allergies. We're engaged in advocacy every time you attend a workshop like this one. You're educating yourself, and you're listening, and you're being aware and engaged in what the needs are of children, and you are advocating for them in this way. You're an advocate when you talk to other parents in your school and in your community, and are figuring out what issues are happening that are affecting your child and your classroom and your school. Namiko, did you have something you wanted to add on here about?
I'm sorry, I'm drawing a blank.
it doesn't have to be just advocating for people who look like you.
Oh, yes. Okay. So I'm sorry. I thought we were going to the next slide. So like there are a lot of PTAs, some PTAs that where the leadership does not reflect the makeup of the school community. And for whatever reason, it's like that, right? And I think within the past year, BIPOC, Black, Indigenous people of color, we've had to do a lot of our own heavy lifting on issues that directly affect us. And that's how I choose to do it. You know, in my district, we don't have a lot of PTA members that look, or we don't have a lot of active PTA members that are Asian, right? That are East Asian. And there was an incident of bullying, and it turned into this huge thing. And, you know, it was very serious, but people were afraid and people were angry. And then I just kind of knew, I was a president at my son's middle school, and my co-president happens to be Indian. So we said, look, we have to put something out, you know, and we put ourselves out there, and we said, growing up, we've experienced the same kind of bullying ourselves. And, you know, we hear all the parents, and we know the anger, and we know the fear. We fear for our own children. But we also know that the district, and we have a really good relationship with our principal, and she was totally, you know, working with us and supported us, and was absolutely, you know, on board with everything. You know, we said we have to trust that our district and our school administrators know what they're doing, and they're going to handle this with the dignity and with privacy, because, you know, privacy for the victim, also privacy of the alleged perpetrators. You know, we're still talking about children, right? So this turned out to be a huge thing. So, you know, put yourself out there for your own community. But you don't, you know, we had a middle-aged white man come to the board meeting where all the parents were like voicing their concerns and their fears. And he said, you know, I might not know this exact feeling that you're feeling, but I'm Jewish. I've had, you know, similar instances my entire life. And so that kind of turned it on its head for me, that here's a, you know, a white guy, a white man, you think he was never touched by any kind of bullying or you know, racism or any kind of hate. And he put himself out there. So if you're going to be an ally, be an ally. You know, don't let, you know, you speak for your children. We all speak for our children, right? That's why we got into PTA, as we said at the very beginning. But you have to be a voice for the children who aren't your children, you know, for the children who don't look like you. I think it's even more important to be an advocate for those kids, and to speak for those families as well, because they don't have a voice usually, or they have less of a voice, or they don't think they have a voice.
And I think it's important that when you do speak up, like Nomiko's encouraging us to do, that we always remember who you're talking to, and who are you engaging with, and who are you trying to get the support from in order to get the advocacy success that you're looking for, right? So if you're going to your board, you have to remember what is within their power. What can you ask of them? You can't ask the world of everyone. You have to be reasonable and understand what their position is when you are talking and advocating as well. You know, national representatives are best to approach for overall policy and national funding, like for family engagement and health and safety initiatives. You can speak to your state representatives who hold the financial strings for education, right? They decide how much funding schools get and what kind of education law is put in place. And then you can go to your region and local representatives to handle things like law enforcement and what curriculum is being used in schools and how schools are being staffed and, you know, hiring practices. So based on what you are advocating for and what issue you are addressing, you need to know who you want to speak to and how to speak to them.
So we've had some great conversations here, and both Susan's spoken about advocacy and Nomiko's spoken about diversity. And the most important thing is having voices be heard. And in order to have these voices heard, we need to have them come and be a part of our PTA in however they can be there. So it's important that we all be accessible, that we share our advocacy efforts at however they can help. Can they help by writing letters? Can they help by being present? Can they help by making phone calls? We need to communicate clearly when that we want everyone to be a part of it and how they can be a part of what we are looking to do. And most importantly, we need to follow up because after the meeting is over, it's not done. The work is continuing. So now somebody's made the effort, they've come, they've joined the meeting. If possible, follow up by saying thank you. Make sure if they brought something up that you ask for more information and that you share that information with everyone that was present and the rest of your community if appropriate. If you promised any changes or you're looking for changes, make those changes. Follow up. It's very important. We also want to share the implementation and how things are going. Not every change happens overnight, but at the next meeting, bring it up again. Discuss where you are and where you're going and what your intentions are. The most important thing is we just need to have an open conversation. We need to be a part of the community, and that's going to help change everybody and make sure everybody's voices are heard. So thank you so much for joining us. We hope that you have gotten something new out of it. We are now here to speak to you, to answer any questions and discuss your concerns, and we look forward to speaking with you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.